help my nervous system access that strategy. It starts with sensation. And I'm trying to get into those systems as much as I can. Connect to that sensation. Movement is a sensory story. Hello and welcome to Root to Rise. My name is Dr. Emily Splichal, your host, functional podiatrist, and human movement specialist. Today, we are going to be taking a little bit of a dive into my approach for the chronic neurological patient. And we are going to be exploring the role of neurosensory stimulation in neuro rehab. Now, oftentimes when we think about neuro rehab and the neuro rehab patient, we think about strength, mobility, of course, reestablishing motor patterns, but I feel that there is a great disappreciation for the role of sensory stimulation in these patients. I'm going to share a little bit about my background, some of the stories of my patients, and then how you can start to think from this neurosensory lens as far as optimizing neuro rehab. So when we think about neurosensory approach to neuro rehab, we are trying to optimize the brain stimulation. We are trying to access these innate senses that are going to be critical to our perception and our relationship to ourselves. This will include the senses of sight, sound, vestibular, eye movements, skin, joints, so we have proprioception, mechanoception. So from a neurosensory perspective, there are going to be four main systems that I want you to think about. Again, I've already mentioned these, but to keep it a little bit broad, we have eyes, ears, joints, and skin. Eyes are going to represent your visual inputs. So what are you seeing? What is your peripheral vision? Are you spotting? What are the shades of the light and any sort of haziness? And then you also have eye muscle movements. So eye muscle movements have been shown to actually stimulate the basal ganglia, which is part of how we control large movements such as walking, going upstairs, large motor movements. Your ears are going to represent the vestibular system, but also sound. So the balance of the inner ear fluid and the inner ear canals, also with training or thinking about motor development based off of a tempo. And then our joints are going to represent proprioception, and the skin, particularly palm of the hands and bottom of the feet, is going to represent mechanoception. So four main sensory input systems, and from a neurosensory neuro rehab perspective, I am always thinking about how many of these systems can I stimulate at one moment. So as I have that patient doing a balance exercise, how am I accessing their feet? How am I accessing their joints? What am I doing for their vestibular system, their visual system? And I'm trying to get into those systems as much as I can. And this is called sensory stacking. So by sensory stacking, we are waking up that brain and we are lighting up your somatosensory cortex. The more that we can activate that somatosensory cortex, we are going to support sensory feeding motor. And this is the way that it works. Sensory always precedes motor. Sensory shapes motor. So if we are trying to reestablish movement in motor patterns, what can we do to optimize neurosensory? Now, to really understand this and to kind of hit it home as far as the power of the neurosensory system, I want to share two patient stories. Now, the first story, I actually saw this patient a couple weeks ago, and she was a spinal cord injury patient. She actually was going in for a procedure. She had a stenosis of her spine, C5, C6, went into surgery, woke up paralyzed. They had injured the spinal cord when they were doing the surgery. So she woke up unable to move her body from the neck down in this hospital bed. And this was 2 years ago that she had the surgery and the injury. She went from being bedbound to in a wheelchair to when I saw her in my office, again, 2 years after the injury, and this was a couple weeks ago, she's now using a walker. Now, why I want to share her story is that she was initially, when she went through her initial rehab, spinal cord rehab, to try to get her into, again, from bedbound to wheelchair to in a walker, for whatever reason, they were having her wear thick socks. She was always in shoes. They were trying to just kind of create soft, pillowed comfort on her feet and lower legs. And then it was a couple months ago that she was introduced to Naboso. And she was introduced to Naboso from one of her neuro rehab specialists through SciFit. So I actually do want to give a shout out to SciFit, who we work with a lot at Naboso. But they introduced the Naboso products. And for 2 years after the spinal cord injury, she had no stimulation to her feet. Finally experienced stimulation to her feet through the Naboso products, again, 2 years after the injury. And she said that what happened, like she felt our mat, and then she started to get this tingling up her legs. She could start to actually wiggle her toes again. She would feel, zings and electricity, and just like her brain was waking up as soon as she started to stimulate the bottom of the foot with the textural products at Naboso. So long story short of that, that helped her really accelerate her neuro rehab and her goals to walk again. She came to see me, and she had wanted to understand what are all the other neurosensory approaches that she could bring into her neuro rehab. So I want to share a little bit about what I was sharing with her. And she was actually quite strong for someone who had a C5, C6 spinal cord injury, navigating really well and really strong in her walker. But what I had said to her is, I need you, when you are doing your neuro rehab, whatever facility it is that you're going to, or when you are at home, is I need you out of your shoes. I need you to be barefoot so you can stimulate the skin in the bottom of the foot. I need you to access the nerves that are on your hands. So we actually wrap the Naboso material around her walker, the handles around her walker. I gave her Naboso socks to put into her shoes when she's going to use that. You, of course, could use the insoles as well. And then I had her add in as much as she could to connect to her perception of gravity. So we were using weighted vests, wrist weights. I had her using dry brushing, and I told her husband to dry brush from the tips of the toes all the way up through her hands. And then once she does that, we are going to connect to the diaphragmatic breath work and the way that the diaphragm connects to your pelvic floor. So we can start to access the fascial system and the fascial slings and how your body relates to gravity when you are upright. Because at the end of the day, if her goal is to learn to walk again, to go from that walker to a single cane, to no modality at all, and to be fully walking, I told her that you need to be able to feel your body in gravity, and you have to be able to stand on one leg. That is critical. It's a critical component to walking. And the last part that I wanted to share of what I added in with her was visualization. So I told her the way that I want you to do this is you are going to either dry brush, or you are going to do the neuro stick, have your husband help you if you need, and we're going to stimulate all of the thousands of nerves in your skin, in your superficial fascia. And then we are going to lay in bed so you feel safe and comfortable. And you are going to visualize. You're going to visualize yourself sitting in your bed, turning and standing up, feeling nice and strong. And I just want you to walk to your bathroom. And then you're going to picture yourself again, lying in bed, sitting up, turning, standing up nice and strong, and you're walking to the bathroom. And I say, I want you to do this over and over, because what happens is that when you visualize your body doing something, research has shown that visualizing an action, a motor action, actually stimulates motor neurons. So we're starting to lay down the foundation of the activation and the development of these motor pathways to get her into her goal of, again, sitting up and walking without a walker or a cane. Now, if I were to add this in even more, I would probably say, as you were doing that visualization, I want you to have the Naboso neuro balls in your hands, and you just dry brushed and you did the neuro stick, and now you're going to lie on your back and you're going to hold the neuro balls in your hands, and you're going to visualize doing this so that we are accessing as much as we can about the neurosensory system. A second patient that I saw, similar to this as far as how the thought process in my mind of maximizing neurosensory stimulation from doing a rehab, is a patient that I saw when I was in Singapore. She was in a very, very bad car accident, and from that she had a concussion. So this is a TBI or concussion patient who was young, otherwise healthy, and was having a lot of movement inaccuracies, clumsiness. And that clumsiness was just a sequelae or a remnant of the TBI and the concussion. So what my mind, from a neurosensory perspective, was thinking is, I need to start as a baseline, and the foundation of her approach every day has to be establishing body schema. I need her to see her body in her mind's eye, because movement accuracy is based off of our subconscious, our brain subconsciously knowing where that limb or that structure is moving in space. When we are reaching for something without even looking, can I reach for my cell phone and know exactly where it is? I know where my hand is, right? And I'm not even looking, but I can feel and see where that is moving. That is part of that body schema and the subconscious accuracy of knowing where your body and the limbs are in space in relation to external objects. So for her, kind of similar to this spinal cord injury patient, I needed her to start to strengthen her schema. Now, the schema, which is your mind's mental map of your body and space, is an interplay between what you feel and what you see. What you feel, I need you to feel the size of your head. Just sitting here, can you feel the size of your head? Can you see the size of your head? Now, when someone has a chronic neurological injury, a spinal cord, they had a stroke, a concussion, it is hard for them to access that mind-body connection. So from a neurosensory perspective, you want to essentially turn the volume up to the perception, to the senses, so that they can feel it / hear it. So I go back here to the neurostick, to dry brushing, to something. Can we dry brush every inch of the body again? And then we're going to sit there and we are going to feel / see our body in space. We see the head, the neck, the shoulders, work down our torso to our hips, to our legs, to our knees, to our feet, and we feel it, we see it. Do you want to add in some compression apparel? Do you want to add in weights and maybe have someone do this under a weighted blanket or with weighted apparel on? But we are going to start by establishing that body schema. And then for her, what I progressed is I said, when you do your Pilates practice, you're doing something, you're on a reformer, so you are safe and fixed. As you are doing that exercise, that repetitive exercise, I want you to shut your eyes, and then you're going to see your arms as they move forward in the movement. I want you to see the arm as the arm is moving. And if you have a hard time seeing the arm as it's moving with your eyes shut, We have to put some weighted apparel on. I have to put a compressive sleeve on. I'm going to put wrist weights on you. Whatever it is, so that we are again crossing this form of a visualization, but it's really more strengthening the mind, body, the mind's eye to seeing where that body is moving in space. So that's again another way. Same thing in her. Always be barefoot, stimulate the feet before you do any exercises, release the bottom of the feet, get on a vibration platform. We always want something in our hands. We're going to access and understand how to stimulate the visual. If you are stimulating the hands and you look at the hands when they're being stimulated, that actually stacks both somatosensory cortex 1 with somatosensory cortex 2. And it's all about just waking up the brain as much as we can. We have these senses that are so easily tapped into. We just always want to look at every exercise and see or ask ourselves, what can I add in sensorially to help this individual win at the exercise? Now, I didn't mention it for these two patients, but I could have easily added in that we're going to do movements at a certain tempo. We're going to do something to the beat of a rhythm, have a song, and every time you hear a certain beat, I want your foot to step onto the step. As you step up, and there's a Naboso mat on the step, I want you to feel the texture as you hear the beat of the music, or using a metronome. We can incorporate, again, that visual that we are thinking about. When you feel the texture in the hand, you're going to look at the texture in the hand. I love using mirrors for these individuals. So those are just two examples of how I like to look at things from a neurosensory perspective. And that was essentially the prescription that I gave to those patients to add in a neurosensory layer to what they're doing. And then all the other neuro rehab, the gait training and the actual strength and the mobility and the body work, all of that gets added onto it. But we're just always thinking of this layer of neurosensory stimulation that we can add. Oftentimes I will tell people, I provide the glitter or the sprinkles, and you keep doing exactly everything else that you're doing, but we're just going to add a little bit of sprinkle of sensory to everything that you're doing. So you're not changing, we're just adding and enhancing, and that is going to wake up the brain. So I want to give a few additional takeaways on how we can play with these different systems, remembering that there are 4 main systems. And what I'm sharing as far as this neurosensory approach is not just for the neuro rehab client or patient. This is for everyone. This is for children motor development. This is for otherwise healthy adults. This is just for movement optimization. This is for high level performing athletes. And then this is for individuals who are over 65 plus, that active ager, who are trying to really support movement longevity. Movement is a sensory story. So how do we bring it in? So the first one that I want to speak about is going to be visual. Now, visual stimulation, your eyes, remember this is the actual visual input of what you're seeing. So the more that we look around, it actually throws off our balance. So if you spot the way that a dancer spots when they're doing different turns or pirouettes, think very similar. Using and accessing your visual system can improve stability. Playing with the eyes and eye movements can throw off someone's balance, creating a conflict, which creating a conflict could be a mechanism to create better stability. So can you find a balanced strategy when I have you move your eyes? Are you able to access vestibular, proprioceptive, mechanoceptive, and maintain your stability? Now, I mentioned this already, but I do want to emphasize it, that eye movements not only throw off your balance, but they're stimulating the basal ganglia. And there was a research study that was done, and it was an eye movement exercise study specifically for MS. And they had these MS patients do eye movements, and one of the best eye movements to stimulate the basal ganglia and to improve balance are saccades. A saccade is when you do this ping pong ball movement of your eyes where you look right, left, and you go back and forth. That is a saccade. The studies have shown that a saccade specifically as far as the eye movement exercise is very basal ganglia brain stimulating. In fact, there were some hockey teams that would do saccades before they got on the ice because it actually primed the brain and got them ready for when they were playing hockey. So very, very powerful way that you can play with the visual system. Now, one other way that I want to share with this is you can play with the peripheral. And one of my favorite ways to do this is you can be in a distance. So imagine you are standing and you're looking about 100 yards away and you're looking and you're spotting something. As you look far, far, far into the distance and you stay spotted on one point, you want to start to notice what is in your peripherals. Just what do you notice, right? I see the door over here. I see some chairs over here, but you're keeping your eyes really focused on one point. The ability to access visual acuity with good peripheral awareness is very important when it comes to movement accuracy and movement longevity. So those are some of my favorite ways to bring in some neurosensory stimulation through the visual system. Next, or second, we're going to talk about vestibular. Now, vestibular is your inner ear fluid. And we can also talk here a little bit about rhythm and sound and music. Of course, we can do that. But when we stimulate the vestibular system, one of my favorite is to keep your eyes fixated, and then you're going to shake your head no. So think of it just like a cup of water. We're just trying to create little waves in the cup of water. So we're just shaking our head no, 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 no. Or you could shake your head yes. Now, when I have patients do this to access and maintain your stability while doing this. So this shaking the head no or nodding the head yes, you're creating a conflict, right? We're challenging the vestibular system. And when you throw off the vestibular system by moving your head or shaking your head, that's a conflict. You're essentially telling the nervous system, as I perturb you, can you upregulate visual, proprioceptive, and mechanoceptive to maintain your stability? And that's our goal. Through a conflict, create a strategy. So what's happening as when we're doing the no and the yes, what I want you to do is to focus on the visual. So imagine you're standing on one leg, balancing, eyes are fixated, and you shake your head no. I want you to be telling yourself in your head, I see the numbers, I see the numbers, I see the numbers, I see the numbers. So I'm trying to bring a conscious cue to the visual to help my nervous system access that strategy. Very, very important when you're doing this with someone who has a true chronic neurological injury, spinal cord injury, etc. Okay, so that's a really good vestibular perturbation. Another one that I like to do is anything inverted. So something that is changing your position, your orientation. A lot of us are just so accustomed to the orientation of feet on floor, head up. And that is our relationship to gravity. To really challenge the nervous system and drive neuroplasticity and create high body schema and high movement accuracy and perception, we need to be turning. We need to be head down, something like a down dog, right? If we can tolerate it. So how can we start to tease into that vestibular system by getting in different positions that help your body's orientation? That's another one of my favorite. When it comes to proprioceptives, of course, anything that is unstable, wobble boards, Bosus, Dynadis, the kinesis board, any of that wobble is stretching the joints, which is creating a proprioceptive challenge. Those are great, right? We incorporate that all the time with ankle sprains. We go on unstable surfaces. Now, here's where I want you to think about it a little bit different when it comes to the neuro rehab patient. Is the way that I want to actually access proprioceptive, I'm not trying to challenge it right now because I've got a lot of challenges going on, is that I want to help the brain feel the joint easier. using a brace, an ASO brace, an elbow brace, a knee brace, an ankle brace, something that is talking to all of the nerves that are surrounding that joint capsule. Kinesiology tape is great. So using kinesiology tape is going to access the superficial fascia and how it weaves into these joint capsules in the spider web of connective tissue, which is going to talk to the brain. Using weight. I love to give the example of holding light weights. And I challenge you to do this. And when I do workshops, I always give this example. So if you were to stand nice and tall and your eyes are shut and your arms are hanging by your side, and I want you to just feel and connect to your arms as they're hanging by your side. And as you stand there, focusing on the arms and the weight of the arms, could you actually feel the subtlety of gravity pulling your arms down? Do you feel the pulling of your arm at your shoulder joint? Do you feel the pulling of your arm at your elbow, at your wrist? And just connect to that sensation. Hold that sensation. Think about how your left arm compares to your right arm. And now let's add the power of weight. Slight weight, the weight of your cell phone. So what I'm going to have you do is reach down and you're going to grab your cell phone, find it wherever it is, and let's put it in our right hand. So we're all kind of on the same side here. And you're going to hold your cell phone on the right hand. Left arm is by the side. Both arms are still completely relaxed. You're standing up, eyes are shut, and I want you to focus again. Do you notice the difference on the side that is holding your cell phone? Does it seem to talk to your brain a little bit easier? Do you see that arm a little bit easier? Something so subtle, yet so powerful. And if you can appreciate what I'm trying to demonstrate here, I want you to take home that that is the power of proprioception. So when it comes to a neurosensory approach to neuro rehab, I am always having these patients something in the hand. And if you can have a little weight to it, honestly, this is why we developed the sensory sticks at Naboso, is because I wanted to get that texture with weight. They are 2 pounds each, and just holding those in the arms while you're doing your neuro rehab, you are waking up the brain. You are lighting up that somatosensory cortex. So that is one of my favorite ways to access proprioceptive. And then finally, we got our mechanoceptive, one of my favorite. This is, of course, the skin in the bottom of the feet, the palm of the hand. Get some texture in the hands, get on a vibration platform. You definitely want to get out of your shoes. You want to get off of the cushioned mats. When I work with a neuro rehab patient, I am getting them as connected to their feet and the skin in the feet and the skin of their hands as I can. I am never leaving those hands bare. There is never going to be an exercise that nothing is in the hands. Your hands are way more sensitive than your feet. And I love to talk about the feet. But as far as the number of mechanoceptors, here, we have a few hundred mechanoceptors in our feet. We have over 20,000 in our hands. So that is just a demonstration of the difference between the sensitivity and why we need to be able to access our hands. If you've ever heard of the homunculus is essentially this representation of our somatosensory cortex. And what it is, and if you Google homunculus, a homunculus is like this little man or woman, and it has big hands and a big mouth and big feet. And it's essentially saying that the parts of this homunculus that are the biggest are the most sensory sensitive. It's what lights up the brain the most. So if those parts are the most sensory sensitive, I, from a neurosensory approach, am going to be stimulating those. And actually, I've been having some really exciting conversations as far as the mouth and chewing and having something in the mouth to create stability. So maybe you want to start exploring up there as well. So what we want to be thinking about, again, as we wrap this up, is when you are trying to optimize your movement, remembering sensory shapes motor. It is always afferent in efferent out. Afferent is the sensory stimulation coming up into the brain, which is going to shape the efferent or the motor movement out. This is the formula of how your nervous system works. So when we are trying to optimize and rehab and relearn how to walk for many of these patients, you are trying to maximize that sensory stimulation. And I want to leave you, my friends, with one of my favorite quotes again, is going to be, recovery is not just about muscles and movement. It starts with sensation. When we wake up the nervous system, we create the foundation for healing, hope, and lasting progress. If you are curious to learn more about the Naboso products and all of our textured, sensorially stimulated products, definitely check out naboso.com. And if you are a health provider or you are just trying to take ownership of your own body, through my education company, we actually have a certification called the Neurosensory Specialist. We'll teach you how to access all of these sensory input systems. I will go into in that certification how to sensorially stack, how to create sensory conflicts, how to really optimize sensory orientation. It is a really powerful course, and you can learn information about that both on the Naboso website as well as on ebfaglobal.com. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in another episode.